I'm David Payne. The subject of the workshop today is sustainable venturing. A few of you saw my talk last night on a type of entrepreneurship in response to sustainability challenges. And one of the key elements of the talk, or a few of the key elements of the talk last night, involved cooperative solutions. So not just individuals identifying, discovering sustainability opportunities in their business, in the marketplace, and exploiting them by creating or selling products, selling services, changing the way they do business to make it more efficient, and so on. Looking at how to step beyond that sort of simple, although sometimes not so simple, discovery mode of entrepreneurship and sustainability, and move towards a kind of more whole systems change approach. So collaborating with other businesses, maybe unlikely partners, maybe even considering government a potential partner for your business and a potential driver or catalyst for your business. And ultimately, through that process, changing the structure of the markets, sometimes in very small ways, but sometimes in substantial ways, to incent the kind of sustainable business we all want to practice. Members of the Sustainable Business Council and participants in these workshops, I'm going to assume that we all want to see a higher level of sustainability in Missoula and globally. But I also am going to assume that we all want to improve our businesses. So the workshop today is going to try to map that need for profit and growth of the business to this sort of larger sustainability goal. So look at our individual incentives and individual actions, as well as collective incentives and collective actions. Through the workshop today, what we're going to try to do is compress a semester's worth of material, not literally, but I teach a semester-long sustainable venturing class. We're going to try to squish that down into just a few hours and really try to make it practical. And what I do with my MBA students is a similar process of what we're going to go through today. And that is, we're going to identify who we have in the room, so what kind of businesses and activities are going on here. Probably literally for most of you, if we have a couple students in the room, maybe hypothetically what you'd like to do in business. And we're going to sort those out, list those out, to give us a baseline. Another element of the baseline is we're going to brainstorm problems, sustainability problems in Missoula. Some real-world things, some of the more untenable problems. The more untenable, the better. The real big, audacious goals and challenges. But from a sustainability perspective, getting a baseline of what the unsustainable things and unsustainable activities and structures there are in Missoula. So that's going to be the problem set. We're going to have a set of actors, businesses. We're going to have a set of problems. And then we're going to define a vision, what we want to achieve for Missoula, a sustainable Missoula. And then the goal of the workshop is to try to develop this bridge through the process of sustainable venturing, try to identify opportunities to collaborate or innovate to connect these things, to try to resolve some of the elements of this creative tension, all the problems and a vision of the world where we want to be. Have a process to go through that, and a simple 2x2 matrix, a simple tool that I've used in my consulting practice and I've used with my students to some effect, and it's proven useful. It's call it the Sustainable Business Strategy Matrix. So one of the things we're going to work through today is an introduction to that matrix. I'm going to give you a handout, and we're going to work through that piece to identify problems and actions that we can take as individuals, and then start to map it towards linkages with other activities, linkages with other incentives outside of ourselves, and try to develop these solutions. Sounds pretty abstract, but we're going to try to ground it today. First, I just want to get started with introductions. So rather than have me talk at you first thing, I'm going to sit down, and I'd like all of you to introduce yourselves. And what I'd like to hear from you is your name, what kind of business you're in, and what you hope to learn in this session, what your expectations were. So based in part on what I just said, but maybe we can expand the scope a little bit and we can do a little customization as we go along. So who are you? What's your business? And what do you hope to learn? Who wants to start?
I'm Rebecca Stansel and I work with Missoula Housing Authority. And I hope to leave here with some ideas, funding ideas to do more sustainable development.
Let's just, nothing against Rebecca. Let's just list the businesses we have.
Not names.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Misunderstood.
yeah. Nothing personal, Rebecca. How about you, Vicki?
I'm Vicki Bolig. I'm from Hamilton. I'm a real estate broker, green broker, eco broker, whatever you want to call it. And I'd like to get from this workshop how to engage the community more in understanding what I can do for them.
Mm-hmm. All right, and you're Green Path Properties. Okay, great.
Hi, my name is Keegan Eisenstadt. I run a company here in Missoula called Clear Sky Climate Solutions. We design and in some cases find funding for and implement climate change mitigation projects, mostly overseas, but some here in the States. We're trying to learn how to work here at home. Been working overseas for, I don't know, over a decade now on implementing climate change projects. So we're now branching out, the company's changing, and we're also doing some brokerage, and we're finding demand and linking it to supply. And we have all of these problems. I guess what I'm trying to learn, I'm a new member of the Sustainable Business Council in Missoula, and I'm trying to learn how I can be local.
My name is Matt Heisel. I'm Director of Home Resource, Building Materials Reuse and Recycling Center. And we are sort of expanding into several different things that I kind of think of as sustainable ventures. One of them is good wood, sustainable lumber. And several things you talked about last night applied to that. We're really trying to push the market towards greater acceptance and sort of, we're in the same place with sustainable lumber where organic agriculture was 10, 15 years ago, and trying to sort out what the standards are for certification, that sort of thing. So that's one big thing, and then we're also working on a project that I think we're going to call the Epicenter. EPI standing for Environment, People, and Innovation, although that's probably too early for me.
I don't know, it's in the newspaper.
Well, not the name.
Not
but,
the name.
Oh.
Anyway, yeah, we're going to collaborate with other groups to form a sort of collective of sustainable businesses that operate out of the same location and tap into the same market and grow with each other.
Actually, that's a classic model for the most classic.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. And your name again?
Matt Heisel.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thanks.
And I'm Derek Kamisher. I'm an environmental studies graduate student, and I've been involved in a number of sustainability projects. One right now, I guess it's fairly interesting, is to develop a live-in demonstration home on the university campus. And a couple homes are going to be retrofit to be close to zero energy, and it's going to be a home for community and sustainable living. So it's going to be a good resource for that. And I'm here because I'm not going to be in grad school forever, and I'm going to try and figure out how to make myself marketable and find something to do in the world of sustainability.
My name is Amy Gordon. I am a student over at the College of Technology, the energy program. And really what I'm trying to do is find some way that I can help facilitate the movement towards a more sustainable business environment.
How you can help facilitate the
just the move to sustainability. I just find that it's imperative for everybody to be able to make that move, and I'm just trying to find whatever niche I can in order to make that happen.
My name's Sam Hall. I'm the Director of Operations for Sustainable Building Systems, a relatively new business in town. We do energy efficiency analysis and renewable energy systems, and also implement kind of a range of high-efficiency mechanical systems and sustainable technologies from gray water catchment, recycling to rainwater catchment, etc. I'm also a member of the Greenhouse Gas and Energy Conservation team for the City Council. And I guess what I'm hoping to get out of the meeting today is just some assistance in articulating our sustainable mission, I guess. We started SBS without a business plan and without a clear goal set, so we're kind of doing that retroactively now, and there's some challenges there. So that's why I'm here.
Greg Howard, I'm an environmental consultant for a local engineering and environmental firm, and also a student in our college technologies energy program. I don't own a business, but I'm interested in starting a business, biomass recycling. So my expectations of this workshop is kind of get the foundations of what's required to build a sustainable business. Be kind of the main premise of what we'd be doing.
Hi, I'm Kaya Peterson. I work with the Montana Community Development Corporation as a loan officer for business and nonprofit loans, and I'm also a board member of the Sustainable Business Council. So I'm here to learn about strategies that might be applicable to my clients in both of those capacities.
Could you clarify that strategy?
Well, I mean, we work with lots and lots of local businesses, and part of our mission at MCDC is to focus on sustainability, to focus on not only economic benefit, but community, environmental, social, and sometimes we don't have really great tools to provide our clients right now to learn about those things. So, you know, when they come in for consulting or for a loan, being able to integrate some of those ideas and provide some tools for them to use. And we work with businesses across the spectrum, so there's not really one industry that we're focused on.
I'm Genevieve King. I am a small business owner. I have a couple of preschools where we have been implementing more sustainable early childhood education. Our tagline is where kindergarten readiness meets eco-consciousness. And I'm also the new director for the Sustainable Business Council. And so I am here to just meet as many people as possible and network and support anybody in the community that's moving in this direction.
My name is Shireen Ayub, and I'll try to just keep it really concise because it seems like I'm pretty involved in different areas, but I'm in the process of developing a wastewater and hydrologic consulting business with 2 other people, and it's kind of based on the new laws that are going to allow households and commercial entities to separate their gray water from their black water, but also do wastewater treatment in general for environmentally sensitive areas. And so I'm really working hard at getting that going. And the other things that I do are I'm on the finance committee of the Missoula Community Food Co-op, and I've been asked to run for the board, so I'm very interested in how we can integrate the co-op more with the community. And as far as the wastewater and gray water goes, we would love to have some type of a presence at the Home Resource Center. We talked with Home Resource about that. And I'm also on the Sustainability and Climate Change Advisory Panel for the city.
Excellent. How about a goal for today?
A goal?
Yeah, what you hope to get out of today?
How to most efficiently, well, we're already hooked up with a business in New Mexico that has done wastewater for 15 years, and they're helping us set up a business model that's like theirs, use their patented technologies if we can. So I guess the most important thing is, how do you identify who your customers are? How can you help? Two of us are hydrogeologists, so we have some idea of where to look, but how to do market research in general.
I'm Jeanette Williams, and I am a board member of SBC. I have Williams Real Estate. I'm my own broker. I came out of retirement about 10 years ago to go back into this business because I'm married to Walt Redfield, who is Redfield Construction, and many of you know him as we've been on our demonstration home, which is totally off the grid, is on our property, and it's been on the Homeward Sustainability Tours for the last 3 years. And so I think we're on the right path in terms of what we're doing. Myself as a realtor working for myself rather than a large company, so I can do what I need to do to service my clients. But we want to collaborate our talents. And so I'm here to, I guess, look for more tools to be able to do that within our professions.
I guess that probably leaves me. I'm Sue Anderson. I'm the SBC board chair. My husband and I own a small software development company called Balance Tech, and we do software, decision management software for natural resource managers primarily. We deal with some wildfire-related software and fuels management, all sorts of things, a lot of contracts with the government for that kind of software. And I teach at the College of Technology in the Energy Tech program.
Good. Well, actually, why don't I introduce myself or reintroduce myself as a co-participant. Again, David Payne, and my business is, in addition to education and consulting, I'm really interested in developing an organization that we've created. We've got a little website, we've got our LLC set up, and a couple initial contracts, but we're calling ourselves the 520 Collective, and we're trying to solve a real untenable problem, and that is, having spent 6 years in the education realm as a researcher and as an instructor in the business program, I want to solve the problem of executive education. There are a lot of businesses that come to the business school and ask us for education, but the problem with providing executive education from within a business school is that our incentives are all misaligned. We're supposed to be publishing in journals, and most of the stuff we publish isn't very relevant, and certainly to a more practical business audience. This is a stage in my effort to kind of ground a lot of the abstract theoretical stuff that we've had some success publishing, and had some success in doing quick overviews and so on to executive audiences, but really trying to ground the material and practical knowledge and tools. And so we're going to create a kind of quasi-nonprofit that will sit between business and education, the educational institutions providing this product and this service. So my goal for today's workshop is to get a clearer sense, frankly, of what you all want as a representative sample of the types of businesses we'd like to work with. And hopefully I can achieve some of that today. So we have a pretty good set of businesses. So Sue is going to hang those up on the wall. Actually, let's put them, yeah, that's good. That's a good place for them. That's great. So again, we're framing the problem, framing the workshop. What I'd like you to do now is I'm going to hand out some paper, wake everyone up a little bit. Take this piece of paper. I want you to think of two things. One, jot down one or more, but ideally just one or two sustainability challenges, problems in the Missoula area. Something that might feel totally untenable. Maybe, you know, it's the inversion cloud that you experience in the winter. Something big or something small, something structurally that frustrates you. The lack of, you tell me, clean and efficient public transportation, or the lack of building codes that drive the kind of green building standard, you know, green building that we want to sell, or a lack of awareness in the marketplace for sustainable building. You can think of examples that are relevant to your business, but just think for a moment and don't limit yourself just to your business. Just, you know, start there, but some big sustainability problem, a challenge. All right, I see many of you are wrapping up a little bit. Why don't you turn to the person, we should have about a dozen people, turn to the person to your left or right and maybe discuss your issues, your challenges with each other, and try to come up with one or two that you want to share with the group. Or perhaps the challenges you identified can be merged into one. So why don't you just take a couple minutes here to chat with the person next to you, talk about these challenges and maybe how they might link, and which ones you want to put up on the board. We could keep discussing this topic forever, and there's a whole lot of problems out there. But let's pick a few and establish a baseline. So, Missoula-based, not necessarily, but hopefully some Missoula-based sustainability challenges and problems, things that really bug you that you'd like to solve. And share as a group just whichever ones you want to put up on the board. Why don't I start over here on this end with Sue?
We eventually ended up with kind of the larger picture sort of things, but that because of our location and being somewhat isolated, transportation costs in and out of this area are fairly high, which causes a fair amount of problems actually implementing certain sustainability practices. And that's connected to the fact that we don't have much manufacturing here. So all of the solutions have to come from outside. And I kind of got there by starting with the notion of glass recycling. What's the reason we don't recycle glass? There are no manufacturing facilities here. We have to ship the glass out of this area and it's too expensive, and so it doesn't happen. And that's how I kind of got to that. And then as Rebecca from the Housing Authority was talking about, one of her issues then is finding the funding to be able to adopt these things because they are more expensive here than they may be in some other places. So to try and, you know, when she'd like to put in sustainability initiatives, but for her that means then finding more funds to be able to do it, because many of them have a fairly high front-end cost.
So is it fair to capture it this way? Transportation costs are high, and a lack of manufacturing, two related problems. That's good. It's very helpful. Of course, what I'm already hearing is the emergence of a solution, a longer-term solution, and that is if you had more manufacturing, the transportation costs become less important.
And I don't know, on Rebecca's, you might also say that there's the issue of the front-end cost versus the long-term benefits. We still have a fairly high focus in our community on the short-term front-end stuff.
Yeah. I'm going to call that, it's a bit wonky, but first cost bias. And that's versus life cycle cost. Yeah, pretty common problem. That's great.
That one plays directly into Vicky's point, which is a slightly different take on the first cost bias, but it is the perception in society at large, especially perhaps in Western Montana, where sustainability is too complicated, too diverse, too expensive, can't be maintained, and people don't get it. So the perception or the information in the marketplace about a million small actions make up, you know, a sustainable community. And all of those little actions just aren't present as important in and of themselves. That was an important one, and I think it's financially captured there, but there's a social awareness component to that.
So let me see if I can try to help rephrase that. What we're saying is that the sustainability story, and even the word sustainability,
Right.
isn't grounded enough in practical reality and people's literal concerns. So there's too much of a gap maybe between this vision of sustainability
Right.
and what sustainability actually means. Because sustainability actually means, better aluminum cans or,
Right. It's a million
car.
small actions.
And those in and of themselves don't speak
Right.
the language of sustainability. Okay, so sustainability too abstract.
Or, yeah.
Sustainability,
Grounding the story.
yep, good, good.
And then
That's-
the
yeah.
second local problem that comes to mind, which seems like many of us are in the building trades or the real estate profession here. I'm not, but I'm in the middle of a remodel at my house, and boy, zoning is a huge problem, big problem, or lack thereof in the counties, and sort of the relative fervent nature of that debate in general is a problem, I think, in terms of polarizing our society. But the building codes are promoting insane things. Plumbing code promote, the way you check the number of fixtures in your house is that the pressure of water to your house every fixture has to be on full bore with no drop of pressure. Otherwise, you don't get a permit, and that's absurd, right? Who wants every fixture on all, anyway. That's how our code is written. So it's like an anti-conservation code, basically, Just as an example. So it's zoning, land use zoning, and building codes.
Anti-conservation code?
Really. And
That's true.
that's true. The electrical inspection and codes are similar in nature. Like, they size systems for the most use, as opposed to reward you for any type of a benefit. And then you can't install. Anyway, I won't go on and on, but
That's great.
those are two local ones.
Clearly some passion about that one. That's great. Thanks, Keegan.
Our first topic was kind of similar to the one before, the question of sustainability. It has to do with the definitions and standards of green for building materials was what I tend to think about a lot, but it could be applied to any materials or products. I'd love to see a unified sort of nutritional, like the equivalent of the nutrition information on food that tells us embodied energy, energy consumption, water consumption, toxic materials in production or in off-gassing, all of that sort of measured and calculated, and not just slapping green on anything that might be a little better than something else, but say how much better it is compared to all the other options.
So lack of standards. I heard labeling in there, and I heard baselining maybe, or performance baselining, getting a little specific. But I'm hearing a need for standards, some sort of objective reference point.
Right.
I'm green, you're green.
Says who?
Yeah. When I was looking for a house with my ex a number of years ago, we're in Boulder. It's supposed to be green like Missoula, and I talked to a broker who, she was recommended to me, and I said, she started generating a list of properties. I told her a few of the things, a few of the parameters we had, and the first property she got all excited about, I said, "Is it green?" And she said, with just a hint of irony, but mostly serious, she said, "We can paint it any color you want." And the moment green becomes painting a house any color you want, this whole thing goes away. The whole added value that we're trying to generate in this market goes away because people get cynical about it. So we don't want painting houses green. We want standards, performance baselining, and all that kind of stuff kind of helps us do things better. That's great.
The other issue we spoke about was just kind of, despite the best efforts of the Sustainable Business Council and other like organizations to help coordinate conservation and efforts of like to move towards more sustainability, there seems to be an inefficiency in this system, and because there's always like this competitiveness, it's like my project, my campaign, or like we need to do this, we need to do that, and if there could be a more coordinated effort managed from some tier or something, we could, I think, achieve a lot more things, I guess, on a community level, moving towards sustainability.
That's a great point. Another common one too. Lack of coordination of effort, or lack of effort coordination. That's great.
At the risk of kind of repeating what's already been said, I think something we see in our business is kind of a lack of alignment between traditional return on investment matrices and sustainable action, where people don't necessarily realize value in increasing sustainability. And that kind of segues into another point, in that I think that there is locally a lack of government understanding and leadership of exactly what it's going to take to more accurately align those. And yeah, I think that in our business we're able to demonstrate return on investment on some measures, but it doesn't go all the way. And so I think government has a pretty critical role in stepping up and kind of making up that difference. And I guess kind of making those work together.
Do you mean capturing non-market values of sustainability, or, because you're talking about cost recovery in the financial end, right?
Yeah.
But the other benefits of implementing sustainable activities are reduction in greenhouse gases, improvement in
More abstract,
habitat,
exactly. And I'm just saying,
energy budgets.
Yeah, and for average Joe consumer in Missoula, they need to see return on investment before they're going to act on these measures. You know?
Sure.
And there is, I think there's potential in kind of stepping up to that matrix and making it work, but there's also value in going beyond that and realizing benefit in other ways.
Yeah. Do you find, I don't want to get too deep in this, but right now, but do you find that your customers, when you talk about return on investment, do you feel free, and do your customers understand the idea of a more expanded return on investment, something with a social return attached
Totally
to
depends,
it?
and we have to tailor our presentation
Yeah.
to who we're dealing with. A lot of people are strictly bottom line,
Yep.
And other people are undertaking these measures because they see it as the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's a challenge in our business, is to kind of realize who we're dealing with and present it in a way that is going to go over the best to have the end result that's most desirable.
Yeah. That's great. All right. Anything else you want to add? Yeah, just pass the mic on.
I think, just financial opportunities in general feel like they're lacking, and then that would be a huge incentive for people to have.
So financing opportunities, really, or venture money?
Yeah, I mean,
financing?
either grant-wise or
Yeah.
even, living here in town, there's a lot of things I would like to do for me and for the city to promote a more sustainable lifestyle, but I can't afford it. So I just think that there's definitely a window of opportunity there, or something to be devised.
So affordability of sustainable solutions and a lack of financing. Okay. Okay. Why don't we move along, pass the microphone along, and I'll write here with my back to you.
Okay, so there's a lot of overlapping ideas here, which is kind of the basis of what we came up with, is that this area is so full of people with so many similar overlapping ideas that it feels like if people were able to collaborate more, if ideas were able to collaborate more, it would be a lot more efficient if there was a way. I think he mentioned a tier. We were talking about a way of organizing, and this goes along the lines of sustainability having so many definitions in so many sectors. And if there was a way to create a sort of a tree where everything was defined, where you could look at that and know where you fit in, who is your umbrella, who you should be working with. If people were able to collaborate their efforts, a lot more could get done. So an organizational system to kind of bring together the many definitions of sustainability.
So need a system to organize the many definitions. And when you say definitions, it's the many activities of sustainability.
Right. And being able to look at that and know under which area your particular idea or passion fits, and from that being able to see these are the people that I need to work with. In this area, this is who I need to talk to above me. These are the people I should bring underneath me. Just a way to bring a lot of efficiency to the energy and the movement.
It's like a social network or a business network map.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're getting to solutions here, but it's all right. It's good.
I just wanted to mention one other thing, which is, I think, a little bit tied to what you were saying, which is that our economy here is not particularly strong in a lot of ways, and we have relied on natural resource development for so long, and there's sort of this struggle between mining and timber, and how do we maintain that as part of our economy or not? How do we do that sustainably? And then how do we also sort of recognize what the future trend is and how our state can be relevant and how we can be economically viable? And I think that's just a huge overarching issue when we talk about sustainability that, you were saying before, Dave, we're talking about business actually being profitable as well. And I think we just struggle with that basic piece.
So I started writing a sort of long, but this is a classic story of that painful shift from the extractive industry-based economy to a more sustainable, robust, diverse economy. And it's one of those big, big hairy problems.
Right. I mean, I just think that overarches a lot of the struggles that we
But
see here.
if we had people in the extractive industries around this table, how would they respond to that? How would they react to that?
I mean, I think there's a sense that will continue to be part of our economy. And so the question, part of the question is, how do you do that sustainably? And how does that fit into the sort of, with all the other pieces?
It's a bit of an exaggeration to call it a sole source industry, but what we're talking about is sort of a sole source economic driver of extractive industry and expanding the economic scenario.
Well, and they're struggling to figure out, I mean, the nature of our forest has changed so dramatically, so how do you use what the forest looks like now? I mean, biomass, small timber, where does that fit in? Yeah.
Exactly.
What's left?
Yeah. I just think that's such a key piece of local Montana.
Yeah. I mean, one of the mental model shifts that I've seen in these types of economies and some of the work I've done is this extraction mentality. You take the natural resources around you and you repurpose them, you add value to them, and you sell them. A lot of times in these towns, in these economies, there are just underutilized resources that might not have a physical component to them. There might be a university in the town, certainly, and there's a lack of, grabbing the value there and harvesting it and adding value to it. And the shift from, manufacturing economy to knowledge economy, there's a lot of, theoretical talk about that, but there's some pretty good practical examples of that too that we can discuss. But that's a big one. If we solve any of these today, we're making good progress.
So I think I'd just like to connect Jeanette and my conversation with what I'm hearing from Genevieve mostly. I just read a book by Paul Hawken called Blessed Unrest, and I think he essentially does that on a really large scale, that database of organizations that have worked for different values that have not been really recognized by our society, and how he created this database that is interactive, and I can't remember the name of the website right now. And so Jeanette and I were talking about, how do we implement these changes, whether they be, we were talking mostly about transportation and water use and building. And, does it happen through moral value changes? Does it happen through passing ordinances at local levels? Or does it really happen by, saying where the state might, just pass some type of a law that says you can't consume more than so and so many BTUs per cubic meter of, space, for example. And let me think if there was one more thing I wanted to say.
Of course, the answer to that question you were just sort of implicitly asking is yes. All the above. And also, a lot of times when you look at the evolution of these institutions that undergird the sustainable venturing concept, a lot of times it just starts with these little informal codes and these activities that haven't even manifested themselves at the level that Paul Hawken catches them, where they've formalized into some, nonprofit entity or some initiative that people can label. But this idea of establishing new codes of conduct and new conversations, a lot of times these institutions evolve into formalized regulatory standards. And we heard about that last night with the organic standards, the building standards, and so on. There are a lot of examples of that. And I love Hawkins, sort of underlying his thesis is, it's already happening, We're all talking about trying to save the world. If we just stop and look around, we're already doing it.
Yeah.
We're just looking at it the wrong way,
And the other organization that has tried to stop fighting little regulatory battles and using our energy as individuals is POCLAD, the Program on Corporations, Law, and Democracy. They've taught people how to pass ordinances in their local authorities, whether they're township, county level, or whatever level. I keep forgetting. Oh, my last thought was, I'm very aware of what AERO does and what MEIC does, but they're in Helena, and how much is actually happening here that is an extension of that?
So there are a lot of points and a lot of problems that you've identified here. Could you take a stab at trying to narrow it down, or do you want me to take
I'll
a
let
stab
you
for
know.
you? Okay.
Well, I had a comment just to take off on Kaya's extraction. As a member of living in the county, the water extraction, just forget about mining and industry. It's just, I live in the county. I watched my neighbor this year with a 60-foot goldfish pond lose her water, and she's not about to figure out how to do that. I mean, how not to live without her pond. And we live in prairie, and the county has no zoning, no regulations for. I watch another neighbor have underground sprinklers go every day, even when it rains. It's just blatant privilege in so many ways. And how do we regulate that? How do we go about living next to our neighbors without becoming so incensed sometimes? Just on a day-to-day.
Take your water point and the big three whenever we sit down and address sustainability. And my view is water, energy, and waste / pollution. If you could read my handwriting. And then what I heard from your contribution is it's maybe one of the fundamental problems is it's hard to figure out where to intervene in the system, where to attack the problem. It's punching at clouds, Where do I fit in? Is that part of what you're,
Yeah.
It's one of the many points we could have drawn from that. Okay. We have a pretty good list. I'm going to just flip this back down. We're going to do one more similar exercise to this, and then we'll have a break. And then we're going to get down to grounding this stuff. So we're going to define the bookends here, and then we're going to work through the middle. We're going to try to make some connections, and we'll see how far we get. Lack of manufacturing, lack of local, robust business activity here. Identification of transportation costs as being one of the elements that's influencing this. It's hard to get stuff in and out of this economy. Certainly things with heavy nuclei, it's probably a lot easier to move electrons in and out of this town because we've got robust internet. The university is pretty connected, so it's easier to move intelligence than stuff. But when it comes to manufacturing stuff, it's hard. Transportation's part of that. There's a first cost bias in the marketplace. So what I see here is, to some degree, an information failure in the marketplace, imperfect information about what the true nature of cost is. Buying a home that's cheap to own is, over just a few years, when you look at it more than from the moment you buy it, it's a lot cheaper than buying a cheap home that's expensive to own. And that's just, lack of information in the marketplace and a number of other influences, but there was a couple hands.
Maybe this isn't the time to interject it, but at some point I want to talk about green mortgages as a solution to that, and especially with our banker in the room, and it addresses a lot of things that we've talked about here. So.
Second half of our workshop, and we're going to start to track some of those actions, and so that for you will be one of the actions that we identify. But yeah, green mortgages, love it. Sustainability is too abstract. We need to ground the story as a solution, but sustainability is one of those big sort of abstract concepts. I think it's a really flawed term. It's a non-negative. If someone asks you how are you, and you say I'm not unwell, what does that really say about you? So part of this is the conversation we have around this topic, and just using different vocabulary, the way we speak to it, but also fundamentally grounding the story. We're going to really try to do that in the second half. Building and zoning codes are anti-sustainability. Keegan has some passion around this, and it sounds like a few of you do. But the existing institutions, the existing rules of the game are driving behavior that we don't want. So that's a big one. Similar to that, lack of standards, lack of baselining, lack of grounding. Certainly when we talk about sustainability as business professionals, we need credibility, and the lack of standards and the development of standards enhances credibility, and at a certain level we can raise the value of the sustainable products we're trying to sell. That's really critical. Lack of coordination of effort, that's going to map to one of the issues we identified later, but I think it's a common and important one. Return on investment, again, part of the story. This goes to the first cost bias somewhat, but we need to clarify, enhance, and maybe expand the return on investment piece of sustainability, and maybe with government involvement is what I'm starting to hear. Lack of financing, that one's self-explanatory, speaks for itself. Affordability of sustainable solutions. We're hearing a solution here in the problem, but we need a system to organize. There's a lack of organization. We've identified that before. Going through a shift, it's painful to move from this sort of sole source economy to a more diverse one. The big three, water, energy, waste, and mapping to a couple of these others, hard to find a place to intervene. It's a good set of problems. Anything that's missing there that we want to add before we move on? Anything that jumped out? Anything that's obviously, yeah.
Just, and forgive me, it's not yet formed in my head, but the need for networks and organizations needs to link to some third-party entities that are doing these standards, because the standards exist for everybody to play on the even field, but without a non-interested party applying them, we don't have the type of confidence in these products.
Right.
And I don't know if locally this could be the group. But
so there's a lack of objective authority, third-party credibility.
Right.
Okay. Yep.
Wherever in the tree that Genevieve talked about, right? By sector, by activity, etc. wherever those could be promulgated. But then the next piece that seems to classically be missing certainly in the climate change market is promoting those standards as a tool that people should believe in. So having them and getting a certifier is good.
Yeah.
But if nobody knows or the story isn't told, it doesn't help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that communication is patently lacking in Missoula.
Yep. Yep. Great. This is a good list. I'm going to refine it during the break and post them up. We're going to do one more exercise. This one, I want to take a little less time, but I just want to get a sense of the other end of the spectrum. So why don't you take that sheet and flip it over. And let's take 10 minutes to go through that development exercise, and then we'll just go through and list out our vision, a vision of sustainability. So if you close your eyes with me and imagine 25 years from now, however long a time frame you want to choose, to make it realistic in your mind. But let's say, 25 or so years. What does a sustainable Missoula look like? What do the roads look like? What kind of businesses are you seeing on Main Street and Broadway? And what kind of institutions might exist that don't exist today? How are you doing business in this world? What is sustainable Missoula in an idealized form? What does it look like? Why do people want to come here? Vision of a sustainable Montana and Missoula.
Here's the mic.
So I wrote down natural resource conservation and renewable energy, car shares, alternative fuel cooperatives, local food production and consumption, bartering, more income.
Hold on. I'm having a hard time keeping up with you because my pen is not going to be...
It's the green one that failed too, right?
Yeah. All right.
I have a blue one here.
Go for black. Okay. So, efficiency and conservation.
Well, renewable energy.
Renewable energy. Okay. Thanks, Sue. Couple more. Sure.
Alternative fuel cooperatives, which we're starting, by the way.
Car sharing.
Car shares.
Car shares.
And bartering.
A barter economy. Okay.
And local food. And more income equality.
It's going to be a long list, I see.
Yeah,
we'll stop.
And I guess encourage more democratic participation.
As opposed to Republican participation?
Small d.
Yes.
Bumper stickers that say drill, baby, drill.
Yeah. It's kind of like
Should say correction.
in the. All right, St. Genevieve.
All right. I think ours is a little, kind of a idealistic, nebulous sort of
We need
vision.
poets.
Yeah, this was definitely more of a visceral kind of beautiful parkways lit with, solar lamps, native plants, small alternative energy cars, zip cars only type of deal, diverse, locally owned retail and services around, highly efficient, comprehensive public transportation, safe and abundant bike and walk areas. I'm kind of one of those that has joined the anti-sprawl movement, so kind of the multi-use mixed commercial residential growing up, downtown growing up, vibrant, mature downtown, businesses all operating cleanly and efficiently, and the public knowledge of sustainability and practices are mature. People understand them, and probably some really fantastic transportation from downtown and residential centers to the Reserve Street Mall area. And you said think big, so I said we should turn all the parking lots into parks. And you can only go out there if you take the public
And then
transportation.
get Joni Mitchell to sing a song about it.
Exactly. And
That covers most.
yeah.
That's great.
Energy production is local, and increased density.
This is great.
Okay.
Right on.
We need
I love
music
it.
in the background.
When I was living in Aspen, Hunter, or this was actually before I was living in Aspen, but Hunter Thompson, the author, ran for mayor.
Increased density.
And as part of his platform were a lot of these wild ideas, you know? I mean, like eliminating cars from the downtown core. And he actually went so far as to propose a name change from Aspen to Fat City. And who doesn't want to live in Fat City, you know?
That's funny.
But when you look at what happened in Aspen after that candidacy and that sort of wild vision that he had, which was assisted by chemicals and things that we wouldn't necessarily recommend. Yeah. But there was actual practical manifestation of some of those ideas. It got the conversation started. It actually set an agenda, and so the pedestrian malls that you see now in Aspen were maybe an outgrowth from that initial information campaign that this crazy guy named Hunter Thompson actually undertook.
So I know I missed an important one early on about business. It was somewhere early in the thing, and I got a later
Locally
one.
owned retail and services?
Pardon?
Locally owned retail and services? That
might be it.
Yeah, good. When we're done with this workshop, and you're going to have to give me a day or two, whatever, I'm going to get all these things either into a spreadsheet or whatever and post them on the website that you're seeing here, so we can, have these lists as we go forward in the coming days, weeks, months ahead. Keep track of all this stuff, but it's a lot right now. That's all right. We'll catch. I think we're gonna catch the gist of it. Yeah.
Our vision of sustainability for our little group here, from more a broader scale, and the first thing that came to mind was maybe Missoula being carbon neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, a big change in the mindset of the community that we need to be more efficient and focus on conservation.
Yeah.
Still kind of keeping some of our same lifestyles as best we can, but still focusing on those parts. I'd like to see power generation, local power generation, renewable sources. Maybe large networking between businesses. If one business creates a waste stream, another one's going to come in and utilize that waste stream. So we're essentially using those materials up so they can't go into our landfills, aren't going to cause any environmental hazards. And then and also with this, just decrease in our environmental hazards right now, better protection of our resources. And probably the biggest one for me is working on a local scale, essentially trying to eliminate some of our issues with sustainability, transportation, and just working locally, developing businesses that are going to kind of cover all the different needs that people have. I mean, you can't do that 100%. I mean, you're not going to have technology firms coming and building televisions, things like that. But our food, our energy, things like that, certain products can all be manufactured right here and used by the community, and that in the long term would probably help with self-sufficiency in our community.
Good. That's great. Really good list. And that was you three, right? Okay. How about you two? We're starting to get some repetition, but.
Well, something that's somewhat repetitive is the idea of a zero energy city, kind of a carbon neutral city. Producing all our own energy, essentially.
Yeah.
But one that hasn't been mentioned and that I think is really important is maybe hard to do on a local scale. It's kind of a global issue, but it's the economic system that we have. I'd like to see, I don't think we're going to have a sustainable world without an economic system that's grounded in reality and that is somehow more carefully regulated, maintained within certain limits, and this has been a huge thing for me, and I don't know how to get there. But with the collapse of, or the potential collapse of our current economic system, I'm hopeful that there might be an opportunity for some regrounding and a sort of gradual nonviolent shift to something that maybe even operates within the finite limits of our ecosystem.
I may have the number wrong, maybe by an order of magnitude or two, but the number 38 comes to mind of funding that was attached to the bailout bill for renewable energy. And I think it was either 38 billion or 38 million. Hopefully it's 38 billion. I'll check during the break. But towards this new Green Deal. And I think we're getting some alignment on both sides of the aisle politically around this idea. And I think the term New Green Deal, I'm starting to hear.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Keegan.
Let's see. I think the first one that we hit on was very much akin to sustainable neighborhoods. We were sort of diverse architecturally, stylistically, and tone of the aesthetics of the buildings, as well as them being as efficient as possible and using things like the earth itself to heat and cool and a number of other simple ideas that people have done all over, but that they have diverse types of use, multi-use, stores, corner stores, neighborhoods, entertainment places, theaters, etc. Reduces cars, green roofs, urban forestry, quality construction, something that's built to withstand time. And linked to that is sort of this, you mentioned a car share, but what I would like to see, I'm sure all of us have sort of seen university campuses with the yellow bikes or whatever, where you walk out of class, there's free available bikes, you grab one, you ride it to where you're going, you leave it, somebody else grabs it and rides it to where they need to go, and they leave it, and this moves around. We want free bikes, free scooters for people going a little farther, free golf carts for people that have big bags or did shopping. There should just not be any private vehicles in our city at that point. Everybody, there's just plenty of transportation options, including bike paths and walking, as well as available means of transport that are energy efficient. So no private vehicles, with the exception of delivery vehicles, probably. Another twist on that would be, I don't know how many people here have had kids, but we have a little one at our house, and we've only had to buy maybe 10% of his clothes, because everybody has kids, has to buy some clothes. You get tons of clothes. When you're done, you just pass them off. I would like to see some central depots, sort of like the mud tool library here, where, if you need a lawnmower, not everybody needs a lawnmower. I mean, not everybody needs a lawn, but, everybody has a lawnmower, and that's obscene, you use it for half an hour in a week or two. You could have one for 10 or 15 houses, but we just need to have a place where all our stuff can go when we're sort of done with it for that period, and somebody else uses it and brings some other stuff. So we don't need to consume all of these things. We could just use them as a group. And then there are some other things we've talked about, our open space, our aesthetics, our tourism, and the distributed power generation, I think, isn't only about energy, it's also about brain power. You got to have distributed power not just to get the renewables moving, but also to get the way people think and interact moving. We're all kind of focused on how institutions organize us, and I think we're democratizing knowledge and information globally, and that is going to be in some way part of the next 25 years. I'm not really sure what that looks like. Last one, and you started to hit on it, was the economic system and our political system are all rewarding short-term thinking, and that's been a problem for a long time. If we, in the next 25 years, as human beings, figure out, fundamentally, to me, biology is about competition for resources. And this system was sort of an exemplary model of that. But we should figure out a way to compete to cooperate, or compete to collaborate. And if society could figure out how to reward the collaboration, I think we might really be able to achieve some of these goals. So we're changing the rules from competing for dollars or competing for power to competing for other values that humans find important. And I'm not sure how that looks, but...
I mean, this kind of fundamental goal of this notion of sustainable venturing is an alignment of both of those incentives. That group incentive and the individual incentive are aligned because the rules of the game, my individual self-interest actually promotes that collaborative interest as well. And so, what kind of institutions do we need to put in place to make that happen? What kind of actions do you need to take? We've got that as our big goal for the second half of the workshop. All right, a couple more if they're not on the list. You guys got the last.
Things that you mentioned.
Well, you can start off with the housing stuff if you want.
More tax credits for utilizing green buildings. And I focus on downtown a little bit, renovating the abandoned buildings at the moment for more affordable housing. And I also was in agreement on no parking downtown, utilizing more public transportation. Businesses downtown that are green roof, garden tops. And this has to do more with the economy also. It's no more check cashing business. So.
Okay. Practical concerns.
Yeah.
Okay. There was one more little one, which was Missoula public bond funding for local triple bottom line business development.
Okay. Feels like a solution, but it's also a nice vision too. So bond funding. Good. All right. So we're going to take a break. During the break, we're going to put these problems, we've got your businesses, and we're going to put the vision sheet over here. Take a couple minutes to just start to think about how maybe one or two of these problems you might tackle, something that you're interested in. Maybe how your business might play a role. And we're going to fill in the blank here, but with a link to achieving one of these elements of the vision, or more. The more the better. It's a complex challenge, and it's not something that's going to be clean and simple by the end of this workshop. But the whole point of this workshop is to draw this really wide frame and this very large frame and all these big, audacious goals, and just get a toehold on how we can fit into this larger systemic change. And maybe, ideally, what might emerge out of this workshop tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, or a year from now, is the emergence of an institution or two, whether it's an informal collaboration amongst you guys or a business that's missing in this overall picture we're going to paint. Somebody we need to bring in. We need an accountant, We need a public policy person. We need someone on city council meeting with us every week. But the emergence of an institution that could facilitate the kind of sustainable venturing we want to see long term. It's big, audacious stuff. We're going to use a model that you're going to take home with you. It's this simple matrix, so we're going to walk through that after the break and try to ground this stuff a little bit. So ground it in your own experience, your own desires, and your own actions. We've got a lot to accomplish in an hour and a quarter after break, but I think we'll get a good start on it. This has been really helpful and generative. I'm excited about what you guys thought of. Let's be back in 10 minutes if we can. What we're going to do for the next hour or so, a lot to accomplish, but we're going to step through a few action stages. And the way we're going to move to action from a set of problems, a set of players, and an idealized vision of a future world, future Missoula, is to identify some actions, some individual actions, and potentially some collaborative actions or linkages between the action we want to take and what others want to take. So in order to facilitate this, we have a simple model called the Sustainable Business Strategy Matrix, or you can think of it as a Sustainable Business Action Matrix. It identifies 4 quadrants of strategy or action. And we're going to walk through each of those. And as we walk through them, the 4 of them are assessment, and these are terms we'll define in a second. Assessment, compliance, strategy, and entrepreneurship. And these are terms that have a lot of loaded meanings in our vocabulary. Some of the definitions, for instance, the word compliance used in this model is a little different than the way you might define it currently. We're going to use it a little bit differently in terms of defining actions. So I'm going to step through this model, and as we're walking through this model, think about some problems or actions. We'll use some examples. I'll use some examples as we walk through it of some of the things we brainstormed here, but also think, if you can, in your mind, how your business or your initiative might fit into this overall picture. So we're plotting a course. We're going to take big change issues, global sustainability. We're going to look at threats and opportunities. We've identified a few of those, and there's different perspectives on any of these things. But certainly, lack of manufacturing is a problem. The lack of financing is a threat to my business, but maybe an opportunity to change the way we negotiate financing or engage a new financing source as an entrepreneur. But trying to look at those two perspectives, looking at a whole spectrum of influences. We've talked about policy problems, scientific issues, the very notion of measuring and baselining carbon and energy performance and so on. We're looking at civil society demands. We're looking at a desire for a different way of living, a more sustainable Missoula, kind of new urbanist environment. So we're looking at all these influences, and certainly business, that's us. And when we look at businesses, we're going to look from an action perspective at 4 quadrants of action or strategy. I'm going to walk through those today and hopefully get you started on a path towards more sustainable business. So the first question we ask in the Sustainable Business Strategy Matrix, or I'm just going to call it the matrix, is what's going on? What's it got to do with us? What do they want? What do we need to do about it? So what's going on? What's an environmental problem? What's an issue that we want to address or that we're considering when we think about sustainability? Then we think of what things arise from that problem that are a call for action. Are there people out there looking for products that are not in the marketplace? Is there a need for a policy that doesn't exist? Is there a need for an institution that doesn't exist? So what interests, what demands aren't being served? And also, from a more practical sense, is there an emerging regulatory threat out there? Is there potential down the road for new regulation, new building codes and so on? Let's think about the implications of when we assess the problem and define it, what short-term and longer-term demands for a change are out there. Then we reframe a little bit and we say, all right, let's get strategic about it. And instead of just mitigating and responding, how do we do it better than our competitors? How do we find competitive advantage? How do we approach this problem strategically? And lastly, what's new here? How can we change, create something new? New institutions, new markets, new products. And the overall frame is an opportunity-oriented view. This is moving towards these 2 quadrants of the matrix, and I'm going to walk through the details quickly. Our goal is to do something like this, to move from these problems, take these ventures here, or maybe ventures that don't exist, aren't on this board, identify some actions, identify some linkages, and try to get out here long-term, get pulled towards this vision of sustainable Missoula. Make sure that the road that we're building is aligned with this vision. Big stuff, challenging stuff. So, what is assessment? From the perspective of the matrix, this is businesses need to be alert and gather intelligence. Where does that come from? It's simple education initiatives like we're doing today, engaging the university, engaging stakeholders and other experts, learning about what's going on in the policy environment, what's going on behind some of these problems, defining the issues, and identifying where you may be vulnerable. So for a couple of the issues we've identified here. If we're looking at, for instance, the building and zoning codes being anti-sustainable, when we look at that and we're in this industry, what are the elements of lack of sustainability in those codes? As we define this problem, where do those codes come from? Are they vestiges of something else? They're vestiges of prevention of fire and collapse. The whole purpose of those codes when they were written was not to drive performance. They were actually to prevent disaster. So there may be a fundamental problem in the assessment mode in terms of the framing of the policy in the first place. And maybe, as you look at solving some of these problems, you might identify that in the mode of assessment and recognize that might be a linchpin. That might be a point where I want to start to interact with the problem. But defining these issues, assessing your vulnerabilities. Using the example again as a contractor, say, in the city of Missoula, there might be compliance demands, future regulatory changes, but there also might be national regulations that might be coming down the road, some sort of potential demand for change. When you look at that problem, the problem of, let's pick another one. Let's see. All right. If we look at, I'll stick with green building for now. We look at the green building piece. Capacity building is really important. If we want to tackle this problem, do we have enough skills in-house? Do we know how to do green building? Are we networked enough? Do we have access to supply chain information so we can green our supply chain, et cetera, et cetera. But in that mode, thinking about how we can respond to a certain change. Strategy, this is moving from just complying to some change that's wrought upon you from the outside world into a more performance mindset. So this is, do I have something right now within my business or within my skill set that I might be able to do better than my competitors, might be able to do it more profitably, more efficiently? Is there some form, some element, some kernel of competitive advantage that by viewing this sustainability problem and the demands that it creates might drive an advantage in the marketplace for me? Let's think through that. And then lastly, are there new products and services, new things that we could create to solve this problem and drive profit for my business, move us towards sustainability? When we think about entrepreneurship, we can revisit some of these other perspectives. So entrepreneurship from an assessment perspective, maybe when we were defining the problem, we were defining it as a threat, the threat of future regulations or something like that. Instead, from an entrepreneurial perspective, maybe the very change in regulations is actually a driver of opportunity for me. It might be something that I want to promote to try to change the market and increase my profitability. When we think about the compliance, entrepreneurship and compliance, thinking entrepreneurially about a regulatory regime, you might actually try to go for a regulatory change and collaborate with other businesses to try to make that happen. Go quickly through a couple more slides to try to ground these concepts a little bit more. As we go through this, I'm giving you some of the abstractions, and I'm going to try to use more examples to just help you figure out how this is relevant for your business. But we're going to walk through each of the quadrants. Think about your business. Think about some of these questions. So pick a problem. Everyone in your head or everyone in the room, why don't you look at this list of problems, and why don't you just pick one? Maybe one that you promoted, one of the ones you generated from your group, and identify that. Ask yourself the questions, what don't we know about it? what do we need to learn? The term science is just study the issue, right? I mean, a scientific perspective is just study the issue. What don't you know about it, and what kind of action you need to take to get enough knowledge in order to move yourself into action. So what don't you know about the problem? Gather the data, intelligence. Think about what that problem might be in the present and future, and recognize that uncertainty and complexity are inevitable. You're not going to be able to eliminate uncertainty and complexity, but certainly the effort to narrow it down, define the problem, clarify it, and engage the people who might be able to help inform you. So do you need to go to the university and talk to a professor there? Do you need to hire an intern to do some research for you? Do you need to just network with people in your community to learn more? From a policy perspective, think of the expectations of stakeholders, mechanisms. Think of your problem in your mind. Think of what kind of expectations that people in the marketplace might have about this stuff, and think about how those expectations might be met. So if there is a latent demand, you think, for more sustainable, more affordable housing, how are people getting that today? How are they achieving that? And how does that maybe conflict with your solution? How might you leverage that perspective, the way they're achieving affordable housing now, and how you might transform that from a policy perspective? And look at your competitive landscape. So look at who your customers are, look at who your competitors are, and get a sense of what your baseline is, what your capabilities are, what your greenhouse gas footprint is, how wasteful are you, what's your level of performance, what's your baseline? And think of it from an opportunity perspective. And then in this mode of compliance, shifting from getting a handle on the problem, assessing the problem, defining it, to moving towards action, mitigating the threats. What are the threats to your business resulting from this problem that you might need to mitigate and manage? What are you vulnerable to, change in the system? And then how might you adapt? So what kind of changes do you want your business to make? And what capacities do you have, and which ones do you need to build? Not just what you need to know, but what you need to do. Do you have the capabilities? Can you partner with someone else? So what are your capacities? Moving to strategy. Reframe. Think of, instead of responding to this issue and this threat, think about something that might be within your business that might become an asset, something that you can use, that you use every day. Maybe you have a good accounting program, and maybe you can add carbon to that. Or you have a good accountant, and you can get them tracking your greenhouse gas footprint. I'm not going to go through a lot of examples because I want to get down to your examples. So I'm going to stay in the abstract, and we're going to ground it through your attempts to map this out. What are your core competencies? So these are just guiding questions. Build on them from a strategic perspective. Is there something that you consider a cost now that might have profit associated with it in the future? How might you extend your expertise and your knowledge to expand your business? Can you provide consulting services? What do you have that's of value that you can sell and expand? Pretty simple questions, pretty common modes of thinking, just broken out into 4 quadrants. Think about competitive advantage. So, what do you know and what do you have? What knowledge and technology that you have might be better than some of the other people in your marketplace? Think about how regulation and rules of the game might affect you differently than your competitor. So if a change happens in, say, again, this building codes, if that change happened, how might that affect you more or less than your competitors? Think about competitive advantage through public-private partnerships, potentially relationship building as a source of competitive advantage. Just simple questions to ask. And last, in the mode of entrepreneurship, what new products and services could we make to meet new demand? Could we promote new standards? Do we have a disruptive idea, something that might really fundamentally change the marketplace? What entrepreneurial activity could we undertake to make change? Are there new markets that we can either link into or create? And new institutions, and this is a critical one. Are there new partner organizations, regulatory bodies, new codes, new certifying institutions? What new things can we be a part of creating to drive business-driven change towards sustainability? Lots of abstract questions, lots of simple concepts, and the challenge here that I'm proposing to you is to work with me to ground this. So, having walked through the matrix model in a very simple way, I spend with my MBA classes, this model takes a couple class periods to go through, and we work with examples. What we're going to do here is just short circuit that and bring it right down to your actions. So I'm going to ask you right now to think about, when you think through these quadrants in terms of problems you might want to choose to solve, and walking through these quadrants of assessment, compliance, strategy, and entrepreneurship, what actions might arise from just walking through these concepts in these quadrants? So think through quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4, and is there an action that arises from thinking through these 4 modes of thinking? And maybe that action bridges 2 quadrants. So it might, the example that I used earlier is it might bridge quadrant 4 and quadrant 2, the notion of entrepreneurship and an entrepreneurial effort to promote a new compliance norm, a new regulatory norm. Or when you look at your business, you recognize that you're good at accounting or you're good at software development. Well, there's a strategic advantage of combining those two into creating a sustainable accounting software business. Is there something that arises from that? That might be a quadrant 1, quadrant 3 strategy or action. Why don't you take a few minutes? Is that enough to go on? I know this is very abstract in the way we're trying to do this in short form. Does that give you enough to go on to start? Think about action.
So we should pick one of these.
This is a guideline. You can pick one of these problems, or if there's another sustainability, born of this, it might be something more general, but take a challenge, a sustainability-related challenge. Think through the 4 quadrants of the model and try to think of just an action.
And we're all
Something
doing this individually now for the next 15
next few minutes. Yeah. Some strategic sustainability action you can take. I know this is a little challenging to get your head around. Some actions. I want each of you to contribute just one action. Shorthand, what action might you take? I'm going to start in the middle this time. I'm going to start there. Throw Craig off.
I may have approached this my own way, but I just looked at the issue of transportation and how it's a problem. And for this first quadrant 1 assessment, I would do research into the current infrastructure of the transportation system and look at the economics of it.
So, research And your name again?
Derek.
Derek. It's
E-R-E-K.
Okay. So Derek is, say it again.
Well, just looking at transportation for quadrant 1 assessment, I would just research the current infrastructure. And basically the economics of it.
Great. All right. Why don't we go this way for another action?
Okay. Well,
Name again.
My name's Matt.
Matt.
I started thinking about something that's a little outside my realm of expertise, simply because it was on my mind and a little more challenging. And that's the area of green mortgages or green loans of some sort. I had some great conversations with a couple of people just in the break.
Great.
And I am not sure what role I might play in this other than kind of being a network, trying to work with these guys to form a network, basically, get all the interested parties together to...
Around green finance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my action would be to maybe try to convene a meeting of potential loan officers and people in businesses that would benefit from this, builders and...
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Keaton.
I was thinking about, in general, lack of standards, labeling, and baselining. And specifically, I was thinking about CO2, but I don't know, I've got probably 9 actions. Let's pick one.
Okay.
I was going to start with... I was going to start actually from the other side, perhaps.
Okay.
In CO2, the issue of standards is complicated by too many. Too many standards, none of which are sufficiently promoted or understood in the marketplace. So unlike in green building, where maybe you guys don't have enough standards that people can agree on, I guess maybe that's the first action. You clearly define a scientifically valid, rigorous, and vetted certification protocol that can be used.
I'm gonna, yeah.
How's that?
That sounds good.
That'll be first.
Identify
a scientifically valid and vetted certification methodology.
Certification.
For whatever it is you're certifying. Because in CO2 we have way too many. And they vary dramatically based upon quality.
Great, great.
My idea actually kind of is similar to what Matt was talking about, looking for funding for green building.
Okay. So, your name again?
Rebecca.
All right. Green building funding. Sue.
So I tried to tackle the lack of manufacturing, and I realized you can't, I mean, that may be too big. You need to maybe focus in on an industry. And I looked around and I said, okay, what are the primary or the key industries we need to be concerned with? One would be food, another would be housing, and a third would be clothing, if you actually look at basic needs. So we actually have a number of groups dealing with food and a number of groups dealing with housing. So I said, okay, let's try the clothing line. And the first thing then is to find out what it takes to manufacture clothing, because I don't, I mean, it's kind of a broad, hazy, you need to figure out, we'd have to figure out how we do local fibers. So that would entail probably looking into hemp, would grow around here. And I know there's a number of barriers to growing hemp at this point in time. So bringing in, you know, just kind of that. I mean, hemp or wool, or I don't, you know, we can't do cotton here, so we'd have to look at that, or rammy, something, what grows here. And then you'd have to take the next steps then. How do you do weaving? Can you do weaving co-ops? Can you do sewing? I mean, you get the whole thing would have to, somebody would have to take on the whole knowledge package.
Behind it is looking at, you know, best practices, standards, certifications, and protocols behind all of that, and coming up with a code. Okay, great.
Bamboo.
Yeah.
There you go.
And your name again? Shireen. Charyn.
I guess because the DEQ is writing the regulations for commercial and residential
Mhm.
gray water systems, that we've really been trying to expand the circle of people that would be interested in commenting during the public comment phase of these draft regs.
Okay.
So
So how does that, so
Okay.
that the action is,
the action is to make sure that the regs that are adopted by the state of Montana are based on not only prior knowledge in other states like New Mexico and
Mhm.
Arizona, but also the conditions that we find here hydrogeologically and soil-wise. And
so getting local testimony and local input
Yeah.
into state regulations?
yes.
Okay. Yeah. Does that fairly summarize? Okay. And in some way, how might you promote local input and relevance into the regular? Is it just through testimony at this point, the public process?
How might I promote it?
How might this happen? You're promoting
Yeah.
local
Focus group.
buy-in,
Yeah.
local information and relevance into
Mhm.
state regs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And just what would be the action to make that happen?
It just seems to, people just seem to offer their expertise when they hear about it.
Okay.
So I guess
Yeah.
just by talking about it a lot.
Okay. Promote local influence on state regs. That's good. All right.
Okay, so I sort of switched focus to an SBC function, which
Mhm.
is the education and tool aspect of what we do, and we're
Mm.
developing a kind of a comprehensive self-analysis right now for businesses to, when they become members, they can take this, do this analysis and find out where their, shortcomings are, things they could change. And what I want to do is, we kind of loosely put together what we called the Green Team at the River City Roots Festival.
Mhm.
And I want to kind of develop the Green Team into a full-fledged sort of a comprehensive education team, to where we could take the analysis that the businesses give us and with ongoing, constant new education, be able to come out to different businesses and firms and implement these changes, educate and implement. So I guess the action would be to ongoing education and research into the newest, most up-to-date strategies, I guess.
That's great. Forgive my shorthand, and sorry for showing you my back. I'm going to hang these. Actually, Sue, would you mind putting this right in the middle where the light is shining? All right.
Okay. I also looked at green financing.
And it's Kara?
Kaya. K-A-I-A.
Okay.
And one of the first actions I think would be to investigate other people's models and not reinvent the wheel. There are a bunch of folks doing this in other cities, so.
Other green finance models. Great.
I focused on energy and waste, so as a person that's interested in biomass or organic recycling, my first action would be do a market study and find out or determine who all your organic waste streams are in the community, and find which ones that can be utilized for either energy or processed into a secondary product.
So it's a waste to energy research?
Yep.
That's great. Your name again?
Greg.
Greg. There's a theme emerging here.
I was looking at increased financial opportunities, and I was thinking of increasing awareness of current opportunities, kind of along the same lines of reinventing the wheel, where if something's already there and people don't know about it.
Yeah. Would you say that's true? There are green or more, towards sustainability, there are financing options that people don't know about?
I think so,
Something
for
I'm
sure.
pursuing. Your name again?
Oh, Amy.
Amy. promote awareness of existing green finance options. All right. And your name again?
Sam.
Sam.
Yep.
All right, Sam.
And again, I was thinking about the return on investment quandary. So I guess one step would be to identify those technologies that do generate speedy return on income in our existing system, the way things operate as is. And then try to assess what the true costs are for things outside that kind of traditional return on investment payback. And then also articulate and demonstrate that value beyond return on investment to people so that it's in their minds and they can understand it, I guess. And other than that, I guess, one other thing I would like to be involved with more is design side inclusion on construction projects, because that's such an easy way for us to get in and eliminate problems down the road. And again, people just don't see value in paying for that service up front, where talk about return on investment, that's best case.
Yeah. Well, no one else got two items, but I'm going to put that one in there. I'm going to call it Dave.
That works.
And that is energy design services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's keep moving. Who's next?
That's it. You.
Is that it? That's me. All right. Good. Well, I'm sure you too see a theme emerging here. A couple themes, maybe some gaps. The next step is technically exercise 2. So what we're going to do here is choose one or more actions that you identified and link it to somebody else's. So what you're going to do is take, if you use the sheet, which would be action 1, action 2, action 3. Just shorthand in this exercise 2 under A number, put the number of that action, and then describe briefly how that action would link to one of these other actions that have been identified. Does that make sense? And maybe take you could try taking a stretch. There's some really obvious linkages here that I'm sure all of you see. So find some linkages. Here's my action, and here's how it links to others' actions. Tell me your name and tell me who you linked with, and I'm going to do a couple linkages up here, and then we're going to identify maybe a few emerging institutional ideas over here. Okay? So why don't we start with Sue?
So the sustainable clothing industry would be zero waste, zero carbon, low transportation, etc. So I'm doing research at this point. I end up seeing a whole bunch of people that I'm going to go to ask questions.
Yeah.
So whoever's researching sustainable transportation, I probably want to know about that.
Yeah.
Even if it's a local, I need to get the product out someplace. So that's Derek.
Yeah.
I'm probably also going to chat with Dave about the energy design services, because we're going to want to do these facilities different than they've been done in the past, probably. So that would definitely come up. Then the waste to energy research, maybe there's going to be a certain amount of waste material probably in the process. So you want to close those loops, whether it's waste to energy or waste to some other product. And then there's probably a high likelihood that I'm going to need to talk to either Kaya or Matt or Rebecca about funding, financing, etc. for this whole industry.
The web of Sue.
And
I see why you're the chair of the SBC.
and likelihood, depending upon what we're dealing with, I mean, especially if we deal with hemp, that state reg issue, state and federal reg issue is going to come up depending upon what we do. We may have some issues if we have plants and effluents. We may have to deal with state regulations in that area too.
Okay.
Trying to, so, I mean, I can deal with almost all of you.
All right. Well, you're going to pick one in a minute.
Okay.
That was a lot of linkages. I'm not sure. A couple institutional ideas, a couple collaborative ideas come up. I'm just going to keep moving.
So I'm looking for funding, green funding,
Yeah.
and I talked with Matt, I believe, that the concept of convening other folks that are interested in green finance, and then based on that, talk with Amy to promote more awareness, and Dave, so when we do get to that point where we're building or designing what we're going to build, then look at energy design services.
All right. Let's move a little more quickly because I want to get to the last exercise, but starting to see a few groups coming out. Linkages, maybe not describe every linkage. Maybe we could shift as we're going around here of how your linkages might fit into like an affinity group. So, you know, we have a finance and funding group that I'm seeing. We have a research group that I'm seeing, and we have a codes and standards group that I'm seeing. Are there ones you want to suggest?
I think an ROI group, because I know for financing and funding, we have to develop some kind of protocol that says you do or don't fit into this green funding bucket, and probably for codes and standards for green building, that's similar. So we've got to bring in that piece.
I see that as integral to the finance piece. I agree with you. I mean, but it's an important piece, but I see it under that.
So ROI is sitting here. How about, why don't we just throw out a few other sort of linkages and groups that you're seeing in this massive action here?
There's the energy issue.
Yeah.
You know, there's the waste to energy, there's the energy design services, and there's also, with respect to carbon in general, there's sort of carbon assessments going with this green team as part of your extension to the business group at large.
I don't want to push my agenda, but I'm going to push it a little bit since we're running short on time. What I am experiencing here in this case is that because I stayed in the abstract in the description of the quadrants and didn't give you real specific examples in the interest of time, we're talking a little bit more abstractly than a lot of times this exercise turns out, but that's okay. It actually helps identify, you know, the groupings are a little more obvious in this case. But any other groupings, any other linkages that you're seeing? I'm seeing also a kind of information campaign or an education component. As I look through this, there's speakers and educators engaging in the public forum. You know, there's green team education. There's this sort of influence piece, and let's see.
Awareness.
Promote awareness of existence.
Right. There it is. Yep. So here's what I'm going to suggest. Rather than have this fall out more naturally, in the interest of time, I'd like to break out into, with your blessing, 4 groups, if this will work. It might not work. We might need to compact, to drop down to 3, but I see an education information group, and it might fit in with a research group. And then I think these 2 fit nicely together. This is what I would propose. Maybe 2 or 3 groups. I'm changing my mind. Those folks whose initiative fall into maybe research and education, why don't they go over to this side of the room? Is this okay with you guys? And then the folks who are talking about financing and funding, I want 3. I want these guys and these guys maybe to talk to each other around this, as Kaya suggested, but stay separate. So 3 groups, cool with that? So 1 is research and education, 2 is codes and standards, certifications, regulations, and the other is finance and funding. So why don't we break into those groups now? I'm going to shorten up the exercises. So break into those groups, and then I'll explain. Why don't we do Where are you guys? Education over here? Education and research here. What do you guys?
We're finance, but
All right.
a couple of finance people.
And that is you, as groups, are going to try to just start mapping out what we call a venture map. So flip the sheet that I handed out to you over. And usually I like to do this as individuals, and then we get a big sheet of paper and we do a large venture map. But I think what I would like to do here is have you guys work collaboratively to draw a very simple map that takes 1, 3, or maybe none of the elements that you guys, the actions, the linkages, and the sustainability vision. But what I need you guys to do as groups is agree on a couple elements of the sustainability vision and put those on the right column, sustainability vision, and a couple of your actions, or maybe a new action that you identified in that last exercise, some new action. List those out, and then a definition of what this initiative is, this linkage. You guys have a research and education something. What does that look like? Maybe use shorthand, but describe what that looks like and put that in the middle. And we really are short on time. But the goal here is to start connecting these issues of really literally drawing lines from the actions to the bridge and start to paint a picture together of maybe what's missing in this picture. Start telling a story around linking these actions. We don't have a lot of time to do that. But why don't you guys as a group try to agree on a couple actions you can share and maybe new ones, maybe ones you already proposed, what this organization looks like, and which element of the vision you think your group and your individual action might lead change towards. Okay? So we're identifying the core elements.
I'm sorry, but what I'm itching to talk about is the possibility.
But what I want to do is to get 3 stories up on the board and spend the last couple minutes talking about maybe just, let's skip the 3 stories. Tell me, I'm going to pick one of them. I'm going to pick you guys as the final story. So tell me a little bit about your conceptual map, how you guys are working together, how your actions are aligning, how you've got some group activity going on, and how you're achieving some form of the sustainability vision.
We sort of just ended up talking.
Okay.
We didn't really map our vision, but we were already seeing a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
And a lot of knowledge that is already in the room that we didn't have to go out and then research again.
Yeah.
You know, what are the models, what's out there already.
Great. Mission
So we're
accomplished.
kind of breaking some of those.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So you're already beyond conceptual maps because you're swapping business cards, you're talking, you're exchanging knowledge.
That's where we're at.
My job is done.
I don't know
Yeah.
if we're beyond the vision map. Or
Yeah.
we may have to go back to that
Okay.
later. But for now, yeah.
So a question for you is, do you see how this exercise has helped generate that? Do you understand this movement from problem definition and staying grounded in problem definition, putting your head in the sky around a sustainability vision, and then thinking about how your actions link and how this stuff flows back and forth? So now when you get stuck and you're trying to change something about your business, you might have something to fall back on, a simple process. I mean, this is an imperfect process, but a simple process of this. You're going to have these sheets up on the SBC website of a bunch of problems and a bunch of visions and a bunch of people doing stuff that you might be able to tap into and just draw some links. And what we run out of time to do is actually literally draw those links. But we're going to do just one exercise. So you're swapping business cards, you're linking. What might you change? I mean, you're going to form an informal group at this point, but you guys are doing as a group what? Like, what are you going to accomplish together? The ROI story you guys are going to tell differently?
I think probably just initially getting together and getting as much information as we possibly can, because people are doing their own thing in every corner, but I think a lot of that just needs to come together, and just to get a better understanding of direction, you have to understand what's available.
Yeah.
That's kind of the intent.
this. You're going to work. One of the sort of powers of this very simple model, the 4-quadrant model, is don't get stuck in assessment. Make sure you're moving to action, that there's some sort of change happening, that maybe that you're thinking strategically. So as a group, maybe you can use this as part of your conceptual vocabulary to say, all right, we're stuck in assessment mode. Let's think entrepreneurially. Let's get out of this box. So maybe go back to this tool and use that as a group to try to move. So just don't get stuck. But you're in assessment mode. That's a great place to start. And that's good. All right. How about you guys? What did you?
What's that? Okay,
What did
our
you
story
identify?
is pretty simple, actually.
Okay.
We took actions like public comment on regulations and/or certification standards.
Uh-huh.
We then took those actions and we found linkages between us to, for example, the energy design services, just to take an example.
Mhm.
Public comment on wastewater systems links to energy design services, and those linkages and actions so implementing those actions
Mm-hmm.
at that level, meaning including public comment on gray water systems, for example,
Mhm.
in the design of a facility of some sort, can lead to our vision, which includes reduced environmental impacts, increased return on investments, promotion of jobs, ecosystems,
Mhm.
As well as innovation.
Okay. So let me just try to capture very simple elements of this. You've got a public comment element.
We've got
and it
regulations
is
and codes, right.
influencing regulations and codes.
Those are incorporated into design work.
Which drives design work.
Which uses jobs and employment to realize basically our Green New Deal.
Uh-huh. ... Green New Deal. Well, there are a lot of elements missing here, but we're going to fill some of these in. What are some things that you can see? Now, these folks have some enlightened self-interest. Do we close the loop here? And that the energy design experts can be part of your public commentary? These guys are
Indeed.
expert testifiers?
Right, there's sort of
Yeah.
we called it technical expertise,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
a piece of the comment period.
You got a problem with bias here, but it's enlightened self-interest, and people who are experts in an industry are experts. You need something else. What might they get from you guys? What are you guys doing over here? Your education and research and your networking.
Right. So, I mean, the actions on the front end are dealing a lot with gathering information, gathering research, and then sharing it
Mhm.
out in the community. And understanding ROI was actually one of the pieces that we wanted to share. And
Okay.
thinking of creating an organization then, or having the SBC perhaps become that organization that develops the tree model that we talked about earlier. Who are all the right people to talk to and who's doing what, so that you know who to go to and how to manage it. And then developing linkages between government and business and NGOs, not just public comment, but actual relationships, because that's actually an area where there is some weakness right now. Is there's still a fair amount of in Missoula contention, I guess, between the business community and say the government sector or the NGOs, and to try and build better relationships between them.
Yeah.
We saw as a linkage.
Okay.
And our ending goal, sort of the Green New Deal, but more focusing on the clean, efficient business model. So we now have a sustainable economy with, closed loop, zero waste, renewable energy driven business. So.
Closed loop community. We don't have enough time to keep fleshing out, but you can see some obvious synergy in terms of the people who are trying to influence code, and you guys have research and a networking agenda, so you can provide, this is your tree network. Certainly they can tap your network for expert testimony. There's public-private initiatives here. There's a lot of filling in the blank. There might be some role of an institution like SBC sitting here in the middle. When we talked about problems, We talked about credibility and the lack of an enlightened third party or so on. There might be a nonprofit that acts as a boundary organization between these two influences. What else? Anything? I mean, this is pretty abstract, but anything else that we think of? Any other actions? We've got research. There's a lot of research going on. I mean, one thing that emerges pretty quickly out of this is that there's a lot of assessment and a lot of research. And you might have at SBC a real need at this point in your organization's history to tap some of these people who are here in the room, and then you guys reach out and tap a couple people that you know from the member network and work with Genevieve to get a research grant going. They can spill over knowledge to your businesses. And keeping an eye on the overall picture. It's a lot of balls in the air here, but the whole goal of this exercise was to try to bring this down to earth just a little bit, but hold the whole space. So when you guys go, I guess as a wrap up, I have a few slides, but I'm going to skip those. Going forward, a venture map. Trying to stay grounded in what the problems of the community are. Get a sense of that. That's the assessment element of the matrix. But we'll have this list on the SBC website, and maybe we can make it a living list. But stay grounded in the core problems, because in these problems are opportunities. And that's one of the fundamental lessons of sustainable venturing is the existence of problems equals the existence of opportunities. So as a business entrepreneur, go back to this stuff and think about how it drives demand for your business or change. Then toward where? We talk about visioning exercises all the time, and they feel very abstract and so on, but it's not irrelevant to have in the back of your mind some idealized vision of a better world, and check in on that every once in a while. Don't get lost in the details, and sure, you got to check your balance sheet, and you got to make sure the lights stay on, but revisit this stuff and realize that this is creating some pull for your business. There's some push from over there, there's some pull here. And then along the way, rather than being bumper cars on the road to sustainability, where we're all trying to do, I got my research initiative, you got your research initiative, and it's never going to get going because none of us have time and so on. Look at ways to build roads together, ways to link up together, and reduce friction on the road from here to here. That's through partnerships, cooperation, networking, and so on. And just looking at synergies. This is extremely basic here. We didn't identify, but we've identified a research synergy and maybe an action. If we've done that today, we've accomplished something. And I hope that we have. So I think that's probably, since we're 5 minutes over time, it's probably a place to stop. But thanks for embarking on this sustainable venturing journey with me, hanging on to a lot of this abstraction, being patient with a rushed pace. But I think we've identified some interesting opportunities, and I hope you have a safe and sustainable journey going from here. Thanks.